Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to briefly break down the tactical battle between Guardiola and Solskjaer and try to determine whether Manchester City's decision to play in a 3-2-4-1 was the correct one. But before we do that, don't forget to give our video a thumbs up if you do enjoy it. The bell below does give you daily notifications regarding our organic, unfiltered soccer/football analysis. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel on our road to 3K subscribers. So when we break down the game and do look at the board, we have Manchester City in that 3-2-4-1, like I said, and we ended up seeing United revert to one of their big game formations. Here they did play in that 3-4-1-2, and that does have Martial and Greenwood up front, and that's probably why Guardiola did look to shift to a three-man backline. Have 3v2 against a pacey United attack to ensure that there's defensive cover. The other aspect to it was that he didn't want United to disrupt his side in that midfield zone, and we have seen United do that when they do shift into this formation or that 4-4-2 diamond that's essentially a 4-3-1-2. And what ends up happening there is that, for instance, you would have Lingard stepping to Rodri, and then Fred and Matic would be tasked with stepping to the other two midfielders. And that's if Guardiola did look to play a 4-3-3, and Solskjaer probably expected them to possibly go 4-2-3-1 as well, and that would see Matic sit on the number 10, and then have Lingard and Fred look to step to the additional midfielders. So Guardiola wanted to avoid that, and frankly the 3-4-2-1 was an interesting proposition, and Solskjaer struggled to deal with it in the earlier stages. From a defensive aspect, City did press from the front, and what we ended up seeing there was Aguero stepping to Harry Maguire. We had Bernardo Silva and Kevin de Bruyne looking to shift to Luke Shaw and Lindelof. Mahrez and Raheem Sterling were stepping to the United wingbacks. And then you would expect Rodri and Gundogan to step into the path of Matic and Fred. That happened on a few occasions, and that does leave Lingard free. But what we also saw from City's pressing was that when we had De Bruyne and Bernardo Silva pressing those wider center backs, they were looking to cut off the passing lanes into Matic and Fred. And that ensured that Rodri and Gundogan were able to step into the path of Greenwood or Martial if they look to drop off into the deeper midfield zones to pull them out of position. The other reason why we ended up seeing Guardiola shift to that 3-2-4-1 was that he wanted defensive cover ahead of the back three, especially with the likelihood of Mahrez and Sterling occupying wider zones. He wanted to ensure that if United were able to get on the counterattack, he did have a box set up in front of that back three, and he had additional cover with 5 players looking to stop that counterattack that possibly does possess 3 or 4 United attackers. Nonetheless, there were other aspects to that 3-2-4-1 that was essential to Manchester City. It was the fact that he could get Sterling and Mahrez in 1v1 situations against Brandon Williams and Wan-Bissaka. They did have the opportunity to overload that center of the pitch to ensure that United couldn't dominate that area. And there was also the aspect that they could find avenues to get Kevin de Bruyne into the right channel to serve as a creative outlet. Nonetheless, although United didn't enjoy large spells of this game in possession, when City did drop off into deeper positions, they weren't really flustered. They had Mahrez and Sterling do a very good job against Williams and Wan-Bissaka looking to push forward. But with Matic dropping off into that center back role to make a 4v3 against De Bruyne, Bernardo, and Aguero, what ended up happening there is that it made it easier for City. Rodri could track the runs of Lindelof, and then we could see Fred being marked out of the game by Gundogan. So that was the way for City to combat against Manchester United. They looked to press from the front, and their counter pressing was very good in those opening 15 to 20 minutes of the game. So United couldn't bypass that initial phase of pressing to hit them on the counterattack. And when they dropped off a bit deeper, they were organized and disciplined. And frankly, United didn't get in behind that City backline throughout the game. Matic and Fred did have good games, breaking up play in midfield and spreading the ball out reliably to key players throughout that game, and that was essential to those brief spells that United did dominate. But when you really break it down, Claudio Bravo wasn't tested, and that was a testament to Manchester City's work rate out of possession. So when you look to Manchester City's 3-2-4-1 going forward, when you assess both sides of the pitch, you see various ways in which City could attack you. You have Sterling, who is hugging the touchline on the left-hand side, and Mahrez on the right-hand side. But when you look to the left initially, you have Sterling looking to go 1v1 with Wan-Bissaka, but you could see him shift in between Lindelof and Wan-Bissaka and then have Bernardo Silva shift out to that left side of the pitch. Sterling also liked to drift centrally, and we did see him look to make runs in behind the backline with Sergio Aguero. So that was one way for City to go about it. But we also saw Sterling drop off a bit deeper, and that was one of the biggest issues with United's defensive approach, is that with Sterling and Mahrez out in the wider areas, Bernardo Silva and Kevin de Bruyne could drop off into those midfield zones to overload that side of the pitch, and that was the issue that United did encounter in terms of how they looked to press. On the right-hand side, you had Mahrez 1v1 in the path of Brandon Williams, but De Bruyne did the same thing. Rather than looking to stick near Shaw or looking to run in behind Williams to get the ball and deliver cross into the box, he dropped off into that deep right channel role, looking to get the ball and looking to make things happen from that perspective. And shortly after that, he did receive a pass in that right channel zone, and with Lingard looking to step out into the path of Gundogan, what we ended up seeing here was Rodri shift the ball into the path of De Bruyne, Greenwood stepping back to try and close him down, and De Bruyne clipping the ball over the United defense for Sterling darting in between Lindelof and Maguire. And we also saw Bernardo make that same movement, but Sterling fell and the ball ended up hitting off of Lindelof and going out for a corner kick. So that's how they look to approach the game from an attacking sense. But the issue here was that United's shape allowed them to do that. What we ended up seeing here is, like I said, United were in that 3-4-1-2. Greenwood and Martial ahead of Otamendi and Kyle Walker. And technically, Lingard should be stepping into the path of Rodri. But the issue that United encountered is that with those three marking out those three players in that zone, you have Cancelo who constantly look to push forward down that left side. And if that midfield battle stays intact, what ends up happening here is that you have Fred stepping out into the path of Gundogan, and then you have Matic in that free midfield zone with De Bruyne and Bernardo Silva dropping off a bit deeper. So that's the issue that United had, and what ended up happening here is that if the ball got shifted out into the path of Cancelo, which it often did, Fred would be pulled out of position, and you want Matic to step into the path of Bernardo Silva, but again, that does leave Kevin de Bruyne free, and that does leave Gundogan free, and even if he steps to Gundogan, that leaves those two players free to get on the ball. What would have been wise for United to do here at Solskjaer would be to shift to a 3-4-2-1, because if he shifts to that 3-4-2-1, you can have Martial stepping out into the path of Otamendi if that's how they wanted to go about it, and then what you can end up doing there is you could have Greenwood and Lingard block off the passing lanes into Rodri and into Gundogan, and then have them press accordingly. And that leaves Fred and Matic in those midfield zones to block off the passing lanes into Bernardo and Kevin de Bruyne. It is a bit reactive, but it ensures that City can't dominate that opening spell of the game. And it also still gives them the counter-attacking options with Lingard and Greenwood simply a bit deeper, but still with the capability to break in behind. But like I said, what we initially saw was Martial and Greenwood stepping out into the path of Walker and Otamendi. But as that game did wear on, what we ended up seeing was Martial and Greenwood drop ahead of Gundogan and Rodri to try and block off those passing lanes into them. But Rodri also replicated what Matic did and dropped off into that back line, which does pull Lingard out of position. So when it pulls Lingard out of position, what we end up seeing there is that Gundogan is the only free player in that midfield zone between those two strikers. And if they shift the ball out to Cancelo, like I said, you have the movement of Fred shifting into that zone. And if they shift the ball out to Cancelo, then you do have Fred shifting into that zone. But the problem with Fred and Matic in that game was the fact that Fred can't step into the path of Gundogan, and eventually he ended up becoming the key player. Because if Fred shifts into the path of Gundogan, then that leaves space for Bernardo Silva to drop off and get on the ball. And that was the biggest issue there. So Fred often tried to keep his positioning near Bernardo Silva, and Gundogan ended up being the spare man, because if we did see Fred shift out to Cancelo, then we would have Matic shifting into that zone to try and close down Bernardo Silva there. However, the only time where it did look like they were comfortable with De Bruyne was when Mahrez looked to shift central. So that allowed Shaw to step into his path, and then Brandon Williams could push forward to stick to De Bruyne. But as you see City shape, De Bruyne can't get touched based off the fact that Lingard is marking out his man in Rodri, and Matic can't shift into that zone because it frees up space for either Gundogan or it frees up space for Bernardo Silva to get on the ball. So De Bruyne was free in that zone, and you don't want Shaw stepping out, and that's why we did need to see a tactical change from Solskjaer there, because De Bruyne eventually became that key man. When I move back to the left-hand side, what could also be said is that we did see an improvement from United, and what ended up happening there was we did see Fred shift out into the path of Cancelo. But when Fred shifted out into the path of Cancelo, Greenwood dropped off onto Gundogan, and that allowed Matic to shift out to Bernardo Silva, and that was a positive improvement for United as that first half continued. So when you break down United's issue in that first half, their persistence with pressing from the front to stop City from building in deeper zones allowed City to get 5v3 in that midfield area. Cancelo acted as a decoy to push forward and pull Fred out of position, because you don't want Joao Cancelo pushing into United's half to possibly create 2v1s against Wan-Bissaka. So with Fred being forced to push out into that position and De Bruyne and Bernardo Silva dropping off away from the center backs, that was another midfield overload from Guardiola in this 3-2-4-1. Solskjaer, around the 15th or 16th minute mark, did turn to Jesse Lingard and gave him instructions to shift to a 3-5-2, and that did help United here, because now when they shift into that 3-5-2, what's essential here is that Lingard can operate in that left side of the midfield zone, and when De Bruyne looked to drop off into those positions, you can have Lingard shift into that zone to close down. And that was beneficial for United, as it limited De Bruyne's influence picking up that ball in the right channel. However, we also saw United kind of shift their pressing to a degree. What we ended up seeing from Martial and Green was that they ended up dropping off on Rodri and Gundogan, like I said, but rather than looking to step from the front, they looked to block off those passing lanes. And when they did look to close down Otamendi or Walker, we would see Fred and Nemanja Matic step forward to close down those markers there. So that was their way of looking to deal with Manchester City. Like I said, the 3-4-2-1 probably would have been a bit more effective, because there's no need to have Greenwood initially stepping into that zone with Martial. And as you could see, Solskjaer eventually had Greenwood step on Gundogan to allow Fred to push forward to Cancelo, which is what he could have initially done from the start, or had Greenwood and Lingard sit on Rodri and Gundogan to limit their impact from deeper positions, and then when Cancelo or Walker receive the ball, have one of those two players press out to the center back and then block off the passing lane into the midfielder, and that would have been a bit more effective. Nonetheless, City were still able to create a few chances, but rather than playing through midfield, they reverted to going over the top, and they probably should have went ahead. When we looked at the second half, we didn't see a significant change in regards to the overall pattern of the game. Daniel James did come on for Greenwood, and we did see United revert back to that 3-4-1-2 for a short period. What they ended up doing there was that they had Martial and James pressing out the wide center backs, and we had Lingard sitting on Rodri, but also ahead of Otamendi looking to close down. When Lingard simply did sit on Rodri and we had Martial tucking in, we would see Williams push forward to close down Walker, but there were also times where we did have Martial step out into the path of Bravo with Lingard doing a good job on Otamendi, and that would also sanction Williams to push forward there. Nonetheless, we did see United eventually go back to that 3-5-2, and frankly, the only chance they did create in that second half stemmed from a set piece by Fred from that right channel that Maguire nodded wide of the net. United's 3-5-2 still saw them press high from the front, and we would have Daniel James and Martial sitting on Rodri and Gundogan, and when we ended up having Daniel James shift out into the path of Cancelo, he would block off the passing lane into Gundogan, and when Cancelo tried to push forward, we would still see James track that run. It would see Fred step out into the path of Gundogan, and Lindelof was adventurous and he dropped off to close down Bernardo Silva. City didn't necessarily improve from their first half performance. Kevin de Bruyne was sitting in positions in between Williams and Shaw, and when he tried to drop off into that deeper right channel, now we had Lingard there. And Bernardo Silva continued to drop off deeper to link play with his teammates, but not offering any sort of threat in that final third or combining with Sergio Aguero. Both managers eventually did turn to their bench. Andreas Pereira came on for Lingard and didn't really influence the game. And when Guardiola did turn to his bench, he ended up sacrificing Mahrez for another ball-playing midfielder in David Silva, and that pushed Bernardo Silva out to the right-hand side. But that change did highlight Guardiola's conservatism here, electing for another ball-playing midfielder to ensure that City did dictate the tempo of the game. And when you look to City's chances, Raheem Sterling should have killed off the game in transition when Lingard and Fred lost possession higher up the pitch. We saw Walker force De Gea into a save, and from City's pressing, Aguero did force Maguire to give the ball away to David Silva goal side of Lindelof, but he ended up dropping off the ball into the path of Gundogan, who was closed down by Fred and Maguire, and he was unable to test David De Gea there. Ultimately, United's likelihood of rescuing the tie ended when Matic was sent off. Solskjaer did bring on Mata, and we did see United shift to a 4-3-2, but even Mata's introduction didn't help them get in behind City's backline. When you break down the game as a whole, Guardiola's decision to shift to a 3-2-4-1 will dominate headlines here, and rightly so. When you assess the overall shape, United struggled to create chances on the counterattack, and that was due to Guardiola's system change. And frankly, that was the main issue that United caused City over their last few encounters. City were able to dominate the center of the pitch by shifting to a 5v3 in midfield with De Bruyne and Bernardo Silva dropping off a bit deeper. And City did create the better chances from open play. And the only reason why this won't be considered a tactical masterclass from Guardiola is, one, they did lose even though they didn't have to win the game to progress. And two, Raheem Sterling's poor finishing in the final third. Solskjaer does deserve credit here by shifting to a 3-5-2 to limit City's dominance. But once again, you have to question United's overall approach. Yes, they wanted to attack in transition, but besides that, when you look at their overall play, the fact that they only created chances from set pieces says a lot, and frankly, that's not good enough at this level. And when you look at City's pressing and their overall shape, they were able to stifle United from creating chances. But let me know what you guys think. Is this result enough to give Solskjaer more time? And does it show that perhaps he does need more players in the January transfer window? And what about Manchester City? Is the Carabao Cup enough? And do you think that they are favorites to beat Aston Villa in the final? Meet me in the comments below. Don't forget I upload videos every day, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And once again, if you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And that was your daily dose of the interviews.